Hey y'all, The Tender Bar is an Amazon Studios or Prime Video original movie that is coming out today, January 7th. I was lucky enough to get this movie early, so major thank you to Amazon for letting me have early access to this film. The Tender Bar, for those who are unfamiliar, is based on a memoir of the same name written by J.R. Can't remember his last name, but his name is J.R. It follows the story of a young boy who is fatherless and moves back home to his mother's father's home, so his grandfather's home, and lives in the same hometown as his uncle who owns a bar. He learns a lot of life lessons at that bar, as well as learning how to find his own father figure and make that for himself, since he does not have a really good example for himself naturally. It is also, if you are unaware, directed by George Clooney, and I'll go into his directing in a little bit. This Tender Bar is a very feel-good movie. I'll start by saying that. It's a good one to potentially watch with family because I don't think there's anything necessarily outrageous about this. I think it's a pretty average film in terms of tone. Nothing gets too crazy. There's not like outlandish humor. It's just very run-of-the-mill movie, and I think for good and bad reasons that works or doesn't work for certain people. Some of the greatest parts of this film are Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck delivers a stellar performance in this film. It seems very effortless, but I feel like seeing him in other roles, this is the most distinct role and the one that I think kind of has the most heart to it, which I think definitely works in this film. Primarily, if you're considering watching this movie and don't want to stick around for a whole review and analysis of it, I would say it's one that you definitely can watch with friends and family. There is like one sex scene that is kind of played for laughs and is definitely very funny, but that's the only thing I would really have on my radar if I was gonna watch this with family and friends. So if you're still in town from Christmas break and you're like, Mom, Dad, let's watch this movie, I think it's a pretty good one, and I think overall it has an uplifting message. But when you get into the minutia, for me anyways, it starts to fall a little flat. The biggest aspect of this movie is that it's a smirk funny movie, like a not a laugh out loud funny. It doesn't really have a genre to it, and there's times when, since it's based on a book and on a true story, it tries to be very self-aware and meta about referencing memoir and how publishing is moving towards memoir. That's a thing that gets repeated a lot in this movie, which is funny because this is based on a book, but after the third or fourth time you've heard the joke, you're really not laughing anymore, and it seems like it's just trying to not only sell you the movie that you're watching, but also the book that it is based on. And again, I don't want to be too critical because this is based on a man's life, and I think the life story aspect, seeing someone succeed and really capture the American dream, is a very uplifting, but when there's other films that have come out in this same award season or time period, such as King Richard, I just don't think this one has the same uplifting spirit or does it as well as other films in the same year have done. I also feel like the main character, JR, is one of the less interesting characters in the film. About halfway, and this is maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert, it switches from him as a child to him as an adult or a young man. Both actors who play him at both ages works really well, and I think the casting was done great for this movie that carries a lot of the film, quite honestly. I do think that the main character, JR, we constantly see him succeed. There's not a ton of like trials in his life other than the fact that he got this less than normal start to his life and he kind of maybe grew up in poverty, but the film doesn't necessarily explore his mother's past. It sort of touches on the fact that his father was an alcoholic and very absent, but we don't really see him putting in the work to write. We don't really see him doing anything. He just succeeds at everything, and that isn't very dramatic. That isn't very interesting to watch. I'm not at this moment aware if George Clooney has directed a lot in the past, but for this film, I don't really think it has a clear directorial style. At certain points, it tries to be very Adam McKay-esque, with the lens really pushing in on certain shots, but it's very unmotivated. There's not a lot of distinct visuals in this film that I can really recall. I can see the overall color tone and palette of the film, but that's pretty much all I can remember about it. Sure, the production design setting in the 70s is really fun, but this movie is kind of just strung together scenes. None of them feel like they are really in there for a specific reason. I found this film to just sort of be vanilla by the end of it. Nothing really happened. It wasn't really that interesting. Sure, there were a couple life lessons in there that like stick with you, make you feel good for the moment, but in terms of overall filmmaking, there wasn't really much to write home about with this one, and I don't necessarily see this one picking up many awards beyond maybe Ben Affleck being nominated in some acting role, because I do think he was great in this film, but he's not enough to save it, and none of the other above average or just decent elements of this film are really going to make it great. So I hate to harp on this one because it is kind of just a lovely film about real life. There's no fantasy. There's some good takeaways or lessons in this one, but I just don't think it's all that interesting of a movie to watch, and maybe the book is where you might find some of that coming from the source himself, JR. If you kind of read it and see it from that first person perspective, it may be a lot better, but as far as the film goes, I just can't necessarily recommend it. I'm sorry, but if you do have Amazon Prime and you do choose to check it out this weekend, please let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing, because I do a lot of these movie reviews as well as television episode reviews for different shows that come out week to week, trailer reactions, all that good stuff. It's here and you're not going to want to miss it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye, y'all.